Hello S2 and welcome to your next lesson on World War One, which is focusing on the causes of World War One. So in your jotter, if you want to take a new heading for today, which is causes of World War One, if you're doing this on a Word document, if you want to also type up the heading causes of World War One. Now, what we're going to aim to do today is we're going to explore the main causes of World War One. So what leads World War One to actually start? Now we're looking to understand the terms of militarism, alliances, imperialism and nationalism. So they're known as the four main causes of World War One. And we're going to use your own judgment to decide which cause you think is maybe the most important. Now, to start with, in your jotters, or again if you're doing this on a Word document, if you could write this part down in your jotters here. Now this is just a short introduction to what each of these words actually means. Okay, so the first main cause of World War One, which we'll be looking at in more detail, is militarism. Now militarism is all about building up armies and getting ready for war. Now that's not just having more soldiers, that includes things like battleships, tanks, aircraft, all about getting ready for World War One. The next cause of World War One is alliances. So alliances are agreements or promises to help another country. So alliances are formed, which we'll be looking at as well, which is another cause of World War One. The next one is imperialism. Now imperialism is all about the building up of empires, so how countries have control of other countries across the world. And again we'll be looking at that in terms of how that causes World War One. And the last one is nationalism. Now nationalism is all about having pride in and love for your own country, and you're willing to defend your own country. So nationalism is also a cause of World War One. So these are the four main causes. That's how we remember how World War One starts, the four main causes. So we'll be exploring each of these in a bit more detail. So again, in your jotters or on a Word document, if you want to make sure you have this written down, you may want to pause the video at this point to do this. Now, what we're going to do next, your task is to draw the following table in your jotter. Now I would take probably a whole page for this. Again, if you're typing this up on a Word document, you can create this table. So what we have here is the factors on the left hand side. So we've got militarism, alliances, imperialism and nationalism. And we have what it means, which we've just went over there. And then you have the last column there which says why it caused World War One to start. Now our task, what we're going to do here is we're going to go through the PowerPoint and we're going to discuss each of these factors. You're looking to fill in the last column there, why it caused World War One to start. We'll go over that after we went over each factor, but that's what we're aiming to do. So by the end of this task, you should have a completed table. So again, you may want to pause the PowerPoint video at this point here to make sure you can draw this table. And the first factor we'll be looking at is militarism. Now, militarism. What is militarism all about? Countries were starting to build up very, very powerful armies. Now military spending was increasing and the numbers of men who were either professional soldiers who had been given military training as a reserve was also growing. Now many countries, including Germany and France, used conscription. Now this is where men were told that they had to join the army, they had no choice, otherwise they would face imprisonment. So that's boosting their numbers in their army. Now both Germany and Britain, whose flags you see at the top here, were also competing in terms of their navies, because remember Britain is an island. Okay, it's surrounded by water, so it's important that Britain has a navy to defend itself. So you're trying to build more battleships than each other as well. Now, the main battleship that Britain is trying to build is something known as HMS Dreadnought. Now this is a Dreadnought here. Now you could see here on the picture, the Dreadnought has guns attached to it because it is a battleship, it has very thick armour and it is a very, very fast ship. Now Britain is looking to build dreadnoughts ultimately to defend itself. It needs a good navy, it needs good battleships, because to attack Britain, the main way that a country is going to be able to attack Britain is either by air, or obviously it will need to use the sea, because Britain is an island and it's surrounded by water. Britain can't be attacked ultimately by soldiers just walking on to Britain from another country because it's surrounded by water. So the navy was very, very important for Britain. The Dreadnought itself, this was a brand new battleship like anything else that had ever been seen before. Now these battleships had 10 bower guns, and older ships really only had 4 guns. And these guns were rotating turrets. Now think about, why would the rotating turret be useful? if you have a gun that can rotate and move, why would that maybe be useful? And it has 12-inch armour plating to give it more protection. Previously this was only 9 inches. And it was a lot faster, so it could go 21 knots, which is roughly 24 miles per hour. Now the German response, what they looked to build was the HMS Westphalen. So they looked to also build battleships to compete with the British. So in terms of Britain and Germany competing, their navies are a very important part of militarism. Now we'll have a look at this here, a short numeracy task for you as well. Dreadnought is built in Britain and Germany, 1906 to 1914. So you have the date down the left hand side here, and you've got Britain and you've got Germany. So you've got questions below here. So it says, what year were the most dreadnoughts built and how many were built and by what country? So if you look closely at the table there, you'll see that the year that the most dreadnoughts are built is actually 1913. And it's Britain that's built 7 dreadnoughts in that year. Now, World War I starts in 1914, so you could see there how tension is maybe increasing and Britain's starting to panic a bit more. Now, you've got there the last question, in total how many dreadnoughts were built by 1914 in Britain and in Germany? So if you have a look at the table there and try and add up how many dreadnoughts were actually built by either country. Okay, so our first factor there, militarism. So we have there what it means, then why it caused World War I to start. Now I've put this in here, you might have sort of different notes based on what we just went over, but why it caused World War I to start. So we have here countries, especially Britain and Germany, were competing to develop their armies, which caused tension. Because if you're Britain and you're sitting there thinking, oh, Germany's getting a really big army, they're getting a really big navy, we better do the same. Now why are these countries building up their armies, why are they building up their navies? It's to defend themselves in case of a war. So this is causing tension between the different countries in Europe at this time, particularly Britain and Germany, were competing to build up their armies. So that's one reason why World War I starts, is militarism. So if you make sure that you've got that part of your table filled out, the next one that we're going to look at is alliances. Now alliances. Leading up to World War I, there was 2 main groups that were formed, 2 alliances. So we had the Triple Alliance. Now the Triple Alliance was Germany, Italy and Austria-Hungary. The Triple Entente was the other alliance, which was Britain, France and Russia. So you could see here, Europe in 1914 in the map below, how Europe is actually divided. So you have England, well obviously Britain, France and Russia, they are the Triple Entente. And then you have Germany, Austria-Hungary and Italy that form the Triple Alliance. So you've got 2 opposing sides in this war. So ultimately, with the formation of these alliances, we now have 2 opposing sides ready to compete against and fight against each other. Now the positive aspects about having an alliance system here, so having alliances, is that you can trade with each other and you can protect each other if it does come to a war, which obviously happens. However, there are negative aspects when alliances are involved, because if you think about country A, so let's say you've got Britain plus 2 other countries, well Russia and France, and they get in a dispute with country B, say Germany, but Germany has the support of Italy and Austria-Hungary, then that leads to a much larger conflict. It's not like it's just 2 countries fighting against each other. Due to this alliance system, it was an alliance system set up that if one country was going to be attacked, then your alliances or your friends in the alliance were going to help you. So it leads to a much larger conflict. It also takes much longer to resolve because you've got more countries involved, and obviously, as we see in World War I, there's a lot more casualties involved due to this. Now, at the time of World War I, what a lot of people don't actually realise is that the King of Britain, Russia and Germany were all actually first cousins. So King George V of England, we have Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, and Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. Now when asked about World War I, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany sarcastically remarked, if my grandmother, Queen Victoria, had been alive, she would never have allowed it. So the leaders of 3 of the main countries involved in World War I, Tsar Nicholas, Kaiser Wilhelm and King George, were all actually cousins. But they had obviously, Tsar Nicholas and King George had formed an alliance together against obviously Kaiser Wilhelm, and he had the support of Italy and Austria-Hungary. So it was actually cousins going to war, leading their countries to war against each other. Okay, so the next factor we had there was alliances. So why do alliances lead to World War I? Well, we've got here, again, you might have something slightly different based on what we've just went over, but major countries in Europe formed 2 alliances. So you had the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance, and this creates 2 clear opposing sides. So you have 2 alliances ready to fight against each other. So this is another reason why World War I starts. What we're going to look at next is imperialism. Now, imperialism is quite a fancy word, but imperialism is all about the desire to conquer colonies, so to have more colonies, especially in Africa. Now, this brings the powers into conflict, especially Germany, which wanted an empire, against France and Britain, which both already had empires. Now, this map of Africa in 1914 here shows you how Africa is actually divided up and which countries own different parts of Africa. Now, Britain has an empire at this point. France also has an empire. Austria-Hungary has an empire, and Germany has an empire as well. And you'll see on the right hand side here how different parts of Africa are actually divided up at this time. So you've got their colonies ruled by the British, colonies ruled by the French, you've got the Spanish have got land in Africa, you've got the Portuguese, you've got Belgium has land, the Italians have land, and Germany also has colonies in Africa as well. So this creates tension, particularly in Africa, between the different sides in World War I, because they're wanting more land across the world, but in particular in Africa. So that's causing tension between the different sides. So again, next factor we've got there, imperialism, so building up of empires. So major countries are competing for land in Africa to increase the size of their empires, which again causes tension. So countries are looking to take land from each other in Africa, and this is also causing tension and is another reason why World War I starts. Last factor now that we're looking at is nationalism. Now, during the 1800s, countries in Europe had experienced a growing sense of pride and love for their country. So a lot of people were loving their country and loving staying there. Now, Germany and Italy had actually only become unified countries after 1860. Now, this creates an environment where nations wanted to prove that their country or the people within their country were better than others around them. Now, the results of this were changed and did change history. Now, in particular, the area that we are focusing on here for World War I is an area called the Balkans. Now, this is a map of the Balkans region today. Now, if you look here, it says which countries can you see? Well, you should be able to spot there. You've got countries such as Kosovo, you've got Albania, you have Montenegro, you have Serbia, you've got Bulgaria, you've got Romania there, you've got Bosnia, you've got Croatia. You have different countries within that region, obviously Hungary as well. Now, think about that map there, that's the Balkans today. And then this was the Balkans in World War I, so it was very, very different. So you see here, Austria-Hungary has an empire at this time. Now today, Austria and Hungary are two separate countries. However, at this time, Austria-Hungary is an empire. Now, many nationalities at this time do not have their own country. Now, you'll see here in the Balkans as well, you've got Serbia and you've got Bulgaria and Romania. Now, Serbia in particular is going to cause a lot of tension in World War I. Serbia wants to stay independent. It wants to be its own country. However, Austria-Hungary has Serbia in its sights. It wants Serbia to be part of its empire. Now, this is also going to cause tension because in terms of nationalism, Serbia is proud to be independent, is proud to be Serbia. People in Serbia want to stay there and be independent. However, Austria-Hungary is also looming down, wanting to take Serbia for itself. Now, the fear of nationalism. So we've got here, empires were starting to grow scared of the rise in nationalism within the Balkans region in particular. Now, Bulgaria and Serbia, as I've just mentioned there, recently won their independence from the empires, and this was spurring on many other countries to do the same. Now, Serbia was one of the countries that caused the most worry because it had a large Slav population that wants to stay independent. Okay, so the last factor that we've got here, nationalism. So countries, in particular Serbia, are pushing for independence, which worries Austria-Hungary. This causes tension between countries as Serbia is actually supported by Russia at this time. And remember, Russia and Austria-Hungary are on separate alliances in World War I, so this is causing tension. So this is your completed table here about the main causes of World War I, the main reasons World War I actually begins. Make sure that you have this table completed. Now, why it caused World War I to start, obviously this is filled in for you. However, you might have your own notes based on what we went through. But make sure that you're happy with and understand the main 4 reasons why World War I begins. Okay, what we're going to do next is some question practice here. So we have the question, explain the reasons why World War I broke out. It's worth 3 marks. Now, the first reason is done for you. So it says here, one reason why World War I broke out was because of militarism, as this meant countries were competing to build up their armies, which caused tension. Okay, so the first point is done for you. So you just need to do 2 more points here about why World War I broke out. So use your table that you've just completed there to help you to answer this question, And again, remember for an explained question, you need to start off by saying, another reason why World War I broke out was because, and then give your reason in there. Another reason why World War I broke out was because, and give your reason in there. Make sure you're explaining your reason and use that first point there to help you. Okay, so that's us looked at the 4 main underlying causes of World War I. So militarism, alliances, imperialism and nationalism. Now, the main event which sparks off the start of World War I is actually an assassination, and it's the assassination of a man called Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife. This is critical in setting off the chain of events that led to the First World War. Now, not only was it a very, very bad day for the Archduke and his family, but also a very, very bad day for Europe, because his assassination triggers a series of events that would lead to the start of World War I. Now, on the left hand side here, you've got a picture from the Washington Times which says Serb student assassinates Archduke and his Duchess, and that is a picture there at the bottom of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife. So next lesson we'll look at his assassination, why that leads to the beginning of World War I. Okay, so what you're looking to upload via Teams for this lesson is your completed table on the 4 main causes of World War I, so make sure that's completed either in your jotter or on a Word document, and your answer to the explained question, which is worth 3 marks. Again, if you have any questions about anything covered in this lesson, then please just let your teacher know. Thank you.